The final characteristic that I want to look at in this series on the fatherhood of God is that the father is also a teacher. A few years back, I remember reading Barack Obama's book, Lessons from My Father. Maybe you've read it, and how he shares some of his life story and journey. And often we talk about the family business. For us as a family, one of the values that we have is food. I love cooking, it's one of my hobbies, and I really enjoy it. It's probably one of my love languages. And I know sometimes people think, oh, we can never invite Chris round for a meal because he's too good a cook. Well, I don't think I'm that good, but actually, I really love it when people cook meals for me. It's one of the things that just makes me feel really valued. And as a family, I've brought our children up all to be able to cook. From a young age, all four of the kids could cook a full meal for the family. And it's one of the things that we do as a family is sit around the table and eat together, share the day together. And it's a culture that we have. For many of us, growing up in families is where we get our family values. We create our culture, we create our belief structures, our traditions. You know, how we do Christmas dinner is probably a tradition that each family creates. Lynette laughs at us because we open presents at funny times. And, every family has their little traditions. And some of the things that we do are positive, and some of the things we do are negative. And what we do and what we allow, what we choose to accept or what we choose to reject, is often comes through a sense of learning from the family. And Father is a teacher who wants to teach us more about who he is and what it means to live in his kingdom. Not every experience of growing up as a family and learning is a positive one. I remember driving lessons with my dad, and I used to dread them every week, and I think after half an hour we were probably ready to kill each other. We didn't get on very well when we were doing that, and not every teaching experience is a positive one. And sometimes that can shape our perspective of Father God and wanting to approach him. Another of the very famous Jesus stories is the parable of the sower. And if you'll recall, Jesus is teaching people, and he tells this parable of a farmer who goes out and scatters his seed. Some falls on good soil, some falls on stones, and some falls among thorns and thistles. And then he says these words, let those who've got ears to hear, hear what he says. And the disciples take him to one side and ask him to explain it. And he says the soil that falls into good soil is the soil where what's said is caught and taught and is allowed to grow, and it produces a rich harvest. Whereas the thorns and thistles are things that grow up and they get choked by all the pressures of the world. Whereas the seed that falls onto sort of the stony ground or onto the path, the sun comes up, and because it's got no root, it's got no depth, it dries up and it doesn't survive. It's a parable that we're probably quite familiar with, but I want us to think for a minute about what the conversation Jesus has with his disciples about the parable. There's a particular expression that Jesus uses when he's talking to his disciples. Parables are stories with a meaning, with a moral, and Jesus uses stories to help people remember and to learn the point. But when he sits down with his disciples, he takes his disciples deeper, and what he says is that the knowledge of the secrets of the kingdom of heaven are going to be given to you. In other words, Jesus as the teacher wants to pass on something deeper to his disciples. He wants to teach them some more about Father, and Father wants his disciples to learn more about him and more about what it means to be in the kingdom. And I love that expression that says the secrets of the kingdom of heaven are going to be given to you. There's something about Father's heart to want to take us deeper. What does Father want to teach us? Well, I think there's a few things. But I think he wants to teach us the family values, a bit like we do with our natural families, as I've already talked about. He wants to share something of those family dynamics and family approaches with us as his children. Yes, there's the family DNA. The fruit of the Spirit that grows is that sort of family DNA. But Jesus wants, in talking about the secret things of the kingdom, he wants to shape our belief structures. And because what we believe shapes how we behave. Jesus, in unpacking this passage with the disciples, he points out that there's a lot of people who can't receive what's being said because they've got calloused hearts. In other words, their hearts are hard, they're closed. Maybe that's the result of being bruised and hurt, wounded. Maybe there's a sense of being scared. But actually, whatever that is, there's a sense of the hearts that have become hard. And he goes on about talking about us hearing with our ears and seeing with our eyes. And I think there's a point there towards three different things. We need to be people who go deeper in the Word. If we want to know Father's heart, we need to dig deeper. And in doing that, we need to be willing to pray. Rather than having deaf ears, we have ears that actually hear what are being said from that secret place of prayer. Whereas we can also see with our eyes. Instead of being blind, we can see what's really being said. Father wants to take us deeper. And the thing about a calloused heart is, the heart is the source of learning. I often look, when I'm looking to employ people, I look and say, does this person have a teachable spirit? And I'm looking for people whose hearts are flexible and open. Often we have emotional memories and they shape how we respond. But actually, God doesn't want us to have calloused hearts that have become hard. He wants us to have soft, open hearts, willing to learn and be taught. Father, one of his characteristics is as a teacher. And actually, what Father wants to do is he wants to share his heart with his children. He wants us to know what he's thinking. He wants us to see what he's doing so that we can walk with him and do life with him. And I love that sense. And the picture I want to leave us with is that we have a Father who wants to share his heart with us.